Welcome back to the Salty Podcast, where it's always a great day to talk about sailing. And this is episode 40. Before we begin, please smash that like button, subscribe, and feel free to ask questions or make a comment in the live chat on YouTube or Facebook. In this special episode, I'm thrilled to chat with South African sailor Kirsten Neuschafer, the winner of the 2022 Golden Globe race. This solo, nonstop race around the world pushes sailors to their limits, navigating without modern technology, no GPS, no satellite weather, no assistance on a boat no larger than 36 feet. Join me as we dive into Kirsten's incredible journey and the challenges she faced sailing the old-fashioned way. Let's get started. Kirsten, I'm going to bring you out now.
Hi there.
Hello, Kirsten. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, Tinsley?
I'm doing great. I'm so honored to have you on. I was really surprised when you answered my, I think it was Instagram, and then I missed it for like a month. I was like, no. So then I made contact with you again, and I was so glad that you agreed to do this. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
First of all, where are you in South Africa? I don't know anything about South Africa, but I would like to know.
I'm actually in Madeira at the moment.
Madeira?
Yeah.
Wait, that's not Florida.
No.
Because if you were in there, you'd be about to get a hurricane.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they got one barreling down on it. So where's Madeira? Madeira's in South Africa?
No, it's in the North Atlantic. It's about a good 1,000 miles off the European coast.
An island?
In the middle of the Atlantic.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, I have to look that up. I don't know anything about that. So for those that don't know about the 1968 race, let me switch over here. Okay. I want to just say a few words about it because, so the first one was in 1968, which was the original. It was very controversial. Like, people didn't even think it could be done, that you could go unassisted around the world. And of course, all you have was your 1968 technology. And because of the different things that happened, that some of the controversial things that happened during the race, they didn't have it again until 2018. And then, you did the one in 2022. So, and then if anybody would like to know more about the 1968 race, I'm going to put on the screen 3 documentaries about that year, which is just fascinating. And that's how I learned about it, was from these documentaries on YouTube. So tell me, why would you pick that race to start with your first race? It's pretty incredible.
Tinsley, I think I was just at the point in my life where I felt it was something I could do, that I could realistically achieve, that I could get to the start line. It's obviously got a smaller budget than some of the very professional races like the Vendée Globe or something like that. And it's primarily an adventure race, and I love adventure, so it really ticked all the boxes for me. I loved the retro aspect of it. Just a race where you really don't know what the outcome is going to be because there's so little information.
Yeah. So had you heard of it before 2018?
No, I only heard of it when the 2018 race was already underway, and then I was sort of loosely observing the race as the people were racing in 2018, and I just got more and more drawn into it. And I just thought, this is one of the coolest races I can think of. So come 2019, I decided I wanted to sign up for the 22 edition.
Okay. And I watched the Kirsten, I want to make sure I'm saying your name right, Neuschafer?
Is
that right?
Well said, yep.
Okay. The Golden Globe story, and that was posted by Sailing Magic Carpet on YouTube, which is, I'll put that up as well. That was really offered a lot of good insight, including some footage from the trip. But you told about how you went up and got the boat out of Seattle. And even that was
Yeah, actually, I got it out of Newfoundland, Canada. That's where I bought the boat. But it did originally come from the Seattle area. That's where it was built.
Okay. All right. And you got some feedback about that boat you chose, right? People think that wasn't a good idea?
Yeah, initially people thought it's a very heavy displacement boat, so they thought it's going to be a bit of a slow boat. But I was quite used to working on heavy boats, so it suited me for the Southern Ocean with the majority of the race taking place in the Southern Ocean. I thought that would be a pretty stable choice. And it also had the longest water line, so mathematically speaking, it has the potential to be fast.
So would you say, and I don't know much about that type of boat, but is it kind of like an island packet with it being heavy like that, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd struggled in the light airs, so with it being heavy, it wasn't always an advantage.
Right.
But it's got a tall mast and a very long boom, so it carries a lot of sail area to make up for its heavy displacement, which means sailing it is a little bit more physical because you've got that extra bit of sail to get up to the top of the mast and the long boom. But it's also comfortable because it's so heavy. It's not a boat that's tossing you and throwing you around and slamming. So if you're going to go on a really long race like that or on a long offshore passage, it's a lovely boat to sail. Also, the long keel, it's good for beating. It just sits well in the water. It doesn't slam at all. So I was happy with the choice.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, was it hard to get used to just constantly being in motion in the Southern Ocean?
Not really. As long as the boat was moving, I was pretty happy.
Yeah.
The hardest part for me, as always, was being becalmed. And because we had southern limits on that race, a certain latitude that you weren't allowed to go south of, otherwise you get penalties. That made things difficult because it sometimes meant that you were stuck in the high pressure without wind when you knew full well there was wind just maybe 60 or 100 miles further south and you couldn't go there. And that was difficult because on the Southern Ocean, if you don't have wind, you've still got a lot of swell. Now you're trying to keep a boat moving without any wind, so the sails are slamming and the motion just isn't pleasant.
Yeah, that wouldn't be much fun just sitting there rocking with you're not moving. Yeah. So the first race, the winner was Robert Knox Johnson, and I'm going to list a documentary about him. And 2018 is it Jean-Luc Van den Heide, a 73-year-old guy, right?
Yeah.
And Robert Knox did it in 312 days, and Jean-Luc did it in 211 days, and you did it in 233 days. What do you think? And you're the first woman, we have to say. That's pretty darn cool. And the first South African. Yay! So what do you think? Do you think it's the length of the boat? Like Robert Knox, he took 312 days, and you guys did 211 and 233. Do you think it was the length of the boat? Because his was like 32 feet.
I think in Sir Robert Knox Johnston's case, it might have been the length of the boat because, of course, a longer boat is faster, but he had a lot of other things that he was dealing with as well. For example, his self-steering had broken, so he did the majority of that race without self-steering, with sheet to tiller or hand steering, so that would have been a huge factor to slow him down, I would imagine. Yeah. And then in the 2018 edition, they left earlier. They left in, I think, June. And they didn't have to keep the Brazilian island of Trinidad to port, whereas we had to, which invariably meant that you had to sail a larger distance. And also in the 2018 edition, there was no restriction on how much you'd motor. So you could leave with a full tank and you could come back with an empty tank. That would be no issue. So you could cut across the St. Helena High straight for Cape Town. You didn't have to do a huge curve to get past Trinidad and then go into the Southern Ocean to catch the westerly winds. So I definitely think that would have added some extra time onto the journey.
That was 2018?
Yeah, so 2018, there were no motoring restrictions. In 22, you could only use 25 liters of fuel, and any liter you used over 25 liters, you'd get 2-hour penalty for.
Oh, I thought it was just for to make sure your engine doesn't seize up. Like I didn't know that you could actually use. I guess that makes sense.
With the 25 liters, it basically is just so that you can start your engine so that it doesn't seize up. And,
Okay.
you're not going to motor through the doldrums or the St. Helena High with 25
Yeah.
liters.
But you could if you wanted to, like if you wanted to use it for that.
You could, but I think you'd be inhibited because you'd think to yourself, if you use up all your 25 liters and you need to charge or something like that because you've got no sun, so there's no
Okay.
or you can't charge with something breaks on your green energy, you'd be in a bit of a pickle if you'd used up your 25 liters unless you were willing to risk the penalties.
I see.
But you could use it, like your shaft wasn't sealed or anything like that.
Okay. And Jim McCann, who's been following Salty Bandit for a long time, I followed you every day for the final 2-3. What a thrilling finish. Rescue was incredible. Yeah, please talk about the rescue. We are. And are you and Abalash? What is that?
That's the Indian competitor, Abalash Tomi.
Oh, finished with all of this. Those are good questions, Jim.
Sure.
So are you done? Or are you and Abalash finished with all of this?
I can't speak for Abalash. I don't know what he's doing. I think he's been mentoring other people to do similar sort of expeditions. For myself, I'm really miss the offshore sailing. So I could envisage myself doing another circumnav, solo, unassisted, on the same boat, for example, and using, only old school technology. But I don't know if I'd do it in the race again because the race is expensive, the entrance fees, their restrictions, southern limits, all that. I've achieved what I set out to achieve in that race, so I don't necessarily know if I'd sign up for the race again.
Well, would you just go through the Panama Canal?
Well, that could also be interesting to do a bit of cruising and actually stop and meet some people and explore some cultures and do a different route. So,
Jim wants to know if you've sold Minnie Haha.
I haven't. No, I still have her. I'm kind of holding on to her, even though I've got debt on her. But I just haven't. It's really silly. I'm just being sentimental, but I've not been able to let her go yet.
Well, I understand. I don't think you should. I know you mentioned in the video with, Sailing Magic Carpet that you were going to get it ready and fix everything and then maybe sell it. But I don't know. You and that boat went through a lot together.
Yeah, we did. And I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into fixing her. And she's now the way I'd like her to be. I guess that's just it. Letting go of the memory of everything, of that whole adventure that was, so life enriching. When I'm on the boat, I can see little things in every corner of the boat, and to sell her would be a hard thing to do, but maybe at some point I'll have to
I think you should just add some solar panels and all the modern technology and go on with about the world. Yeah, go on around the world. So I do have a very, very important question for you. Did you learn anything about packing the proper amount of coffee?
Yeah.
I was devastated when you said you ran out of coffee.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. The very diluted coffee I was drinking got me all the way back up to the Azores, but I sure missed a good, strong cup of coffee. So, yeah, that will be on my list of priorities when it comes to victualling and provisioning next time.
Yeah, because, if you're by yourself and you're going through all the, sometimes you're rocking and sometimes you're in the doldrums, at least you can, if you've got coffee, you can just put up with just about anything.
Yeah, it's true. It's I got a real kick out of caffeine when I got back after, long deprivation.
What was I going to ask you? Okay. You remember Tanya? I forgot her last name. She went around the world when she was 18 in the 80s. You remember? Mm-hmm. Okay. I can't remember her last name, but I read her book years ago. And one of the things she said is I've got it written down. because I've never experienced this. I want to know if you experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
The way Tanya describes being present in each moment, whether making soup, brushing her hair, or handling the boat, speaks to the profound connection solo sailors often develop with themselves and their surroundings. It's not just getting from point A to point B, it's about fully experiencing each moment along the way. It's a reminder of how the solitude of the sea can strip away distractions and bring a deep awareness to the simplest acts. I'm a solo sailor, but nothing like that length of time. But can you speak to that? What was that like? Even though it was a race, I don't know if it was hard to forget that you were on a race.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense to me, especially on that particular race, because we were even more stripped of screens and distractions of any sort. So I mean, I think, yeah, I think looking back now, over a year later, that is an aspect I do miss, is being disconnected from a whole lot of other abstract things around you, like smartphones and whatever communication that you're constantly looking at, and just being fully in the moment. I mean, on a race, I guess you're not, and I guess even on a passage, you're also projecting forwards to when you arrive, or
Yeah.
getting to the end of the race. But you're always reminded that you have to be in the moment, and that is pretty
Right. Yeah, I think that you said somewhere in the Atlantic that you finally stopped thinking about where everybody else was in the race. Is that right? Was it in the Atlantic or was it in the Southern Ocean?
It was. It wasn't too long after the start. I didn't have a very good start because I went too close to the Spanish shoreline and I got becalmed. And it was incredibly frustrating because at that time the fleet was still quite close together. So you could hear people, like competitors, talking to each other and exchanging positions. So I knew that I was behind. I wasn't at the head of the fleet. And it was really frustrating. And then it became a point when it's like, I don't want to listen to the skids anymore. I don't want to listen to the radio conversations. I don't want to care about where the other people are. I want to race my own race. And when I took that decision, I really started to enjoy myself.
That's a great lesson for life. Quit comparing yourself to everybody else, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's true. We all need to race our own race to a lesser or larger degree.
And I know you were disappointed about your friend, I can't remember his name, that he ran aground.
Yeah, Guy de Boer. Yeah, that was pretty sad.
Right. Yeah. And you were, in all the checkpoints, what do you call them, gates?
Mm-hmm.
I think you looked the most bothered in that first one, because I guess it was the reason what you just said.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't feel like chatting.
Yeah, and it was also, it was only, I don't know how many days it was into the race, maybe 2 weeks max. And you don't feel like this arbitrary thing, you have to go now to this island in the middle of the night and sail around this buoy. It's really arbitrary. It's like, come on, this is ridiculous.
You wanted to get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because I was in a rush to get to the head of the fleet, and because I'd had that bad start. So yeah, I wasn't in the best of mood at that checkpoint.
Well, you weren't rude. You just were like, I'm ready to get going. So yeah. I want to bring up that picture of, I think I have it here, of where is it? I wanted to show the route.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I can find it. Oh goodness. Well, anyway, I'll find it in just a minute, but it shows the route from France down, and then you hang a left and go under Africa, and then there's another checkpoint there,
just off Cape Town.
And so I do have a question about these are not in any particular order, so I'm just kind of winging it here. So your own waters in South Africa, did that prepare you for, I don't know how far down. Oh, I didn't mean to put that up there. How far down you've sailed before, if you ever went to the Southern Ocean, like before?
Yeah, I had sailed in the Southern Ocean quite a bit. And I'd approached Cape Town on a couple of occasions from the Southern Ocean. So for me, I did go quite far south because I know that at that time of year, you get very strong southeasterlies in Cape Town and that area, and they can push you far up north. So your approach angle is best if you're approaching from the southwest, and that's kind of what I went for.
Okay, so you had some experience with it.
Yeah, fortunately. So on my way down and passing Cape Town, I was still feeling very confident. It still felt like my turf. If one can say.
Because I would not know what to do because I've sailed in the Gulf and in the Gulf Stream. So I'm going to see if I can find that picture. Okay. It's a real good picture, so it'll be worth it. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right. No, that's behind it. Overlay. Hate dead air. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so you started up here at Les Sables.
Yep.
And then you stopped at the gate there at Canary Islands. And then there was a Cape Town photo gate.
Yep.
And basically, you're just stopping in there for them to pull up to you and talk to you. I'm not sure who the fellow was that was talking to you.
It was probably Don McIntyre, who's the race organizer.
Okay.
So yeah, you had a certain place that you had to go to, which was outside of a port, and you might have to sail around a buoy or something just to say that you've gone around it, and then you were obliged to drop sail or drop your head sails and reef your mainsail down and then drift for, 30 or 40 minutes. And in that time, they did an interview with you, and they called it the photo gate because you were supposed to hand over film and photo footage because it was one way for them to videoize it. And then after that, you carry on sailing.
Did you really hand over footage and everything?
Yeah, I did, because you had to hand over a minimum amount of minutes. I can't remember how much per gate. So I know, like, it's kind of silly because one thing is I'm filming something and I'm saying I don't really know what to film here or what to say, but I'm trying to fill up the minutes.
Well, you did good. It was very interesting. I'm sure it was just, I don't know how much footage you would have had on that trip. Was it just?
Yeah, I was a little bit lazy. I was kind of doing the minimum of what I needed to for, to tick the box. But in retrospect, I'm really glad that they made this rule. Otherwise, I would have been even lazier about taking footage. I would just have, wanted to sail and not have to deal with a GoPro or anything like that. So it was a good rule.
That's good. Now you've got it forever.
Yeah.
I saw that how you checked everything every day. Like you had your routine, climbing up the mast, going and checking it. I need to do that more. I get lazy with that. I just don't even see it anymore. And I was like, oh, I need to be doing what she's doing, looking for chafing and everything.
Yeah, the mast and the hull I'd only do on calmer days. I'd choose my moments. But I would walk every morning and check, and especially areas where I knew they were problem areas. Like if I knew there was a certain place where bolts were getting loose over time or whatever, those were the places I'd always go to and check. And I think for me, for anyone on such a long race, it's really important to prevent something before it actually breaks.
Yeah, and you had to fix something on your wind vane.
Yeah, I got hit by quite a big, powerful wave about 900 miles before Cape Horn, and that did a little bit of damage. So it turned the rudder out of alignment, which I think was a blessing in disguise because the rudder wasn't singing tight on its rod, so it actually managed to swivel without breaking. If it had been much tighter, something else would have broken. So I could fix that, and there was another little part that had fallen out, which I could then zip tie back in again. But I noticed only when I got back to Le Sable de Lon at the end, when I took the Hydrovan rudder off, that shaft was bent. So it was a very powerful wave.
Oh, wow. So have you used a wind vane before? Were you pretty familiar with that?
I'd used a wind vane on one trip before sailing from Portugal down to South Africa. But it was a different type of wind vane. It was an Aries where it steers with the boat's rudder, whereas the Hydrovan has its own auxiliary rudder, and that's what it steers the boat with. So in the beginning, I was a bit skeptical about how good a course it would hold, but with a long keel boat, it was fantastic.
So do you like that? I don't have one, but I've thought about getting one just in case that ever, in case mine ever autopilot goes out.
Mm-hmm. I like it a lot for various reasons. One is you need to balance your sails properly, whereas with an autopilot, you can press plus or minus or turn your dial or whatever you have to do. So, and it will still hold the course usually. But with a wind vane, you need to balance things out properly. Otherwise, it sails a larger S course or it goes off course or whatever. So it actually makes you be a little bit more precise on the sail trim. And it's quiet. You don't hear a motor or anything like that turning as you do with an electronic autopilot, and it doesn't draw on your batteries. So, so it's pretty nice.
So that was definitely in 1968 technology. How long have those been around?
I think they started developing wind vanes before 1968, but of course they've become more precision, like fine-tuned over the time. So I'm sure the modern ones you get nowadays probably work a little bit better than the ones back in 1968.
Wow. Okay, so what did you learn about yourself on this solo journey? It's probably a lot of stuff.
Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, I guess one of the things I learned is that I could do a solitary stint like that. The solitude for me wasn't the most difficult factor, and I kind of suspected that beforehand because I'd done, a couple of solo sailing things before that, and I'd done the 2 long delivery trips on my boat before the race. So that wasn't something that was worrying me, but I didn't know how 8 months would affect me, and it was actually okay. I learned that I talk a lot to myself or to things, inanimate things, the wind, my boat. It's quite interesting because I was speaking to someone who does those Vipassana retreats where you go away for 10 days with other people, but you don't talk. I don't even think you make eye contact. So it's not only the thing of not communicating with someone else, it's the thing of actually not being vocal. And I definitely never did 10 days without being vocal. I was very vocal. I mean, I could say whatever I wanted to when I wanted to because there was no one there to hear it.
Nobody to offend.
Exactly. Except perhaps myself if I was talking to myself. But the talking to yourself thing is kind of cool because I could actively stop, like break the pattern of negative thoughts. So that for me was quite a big lesson because when things aren't going your way, whether it's on a solo race or in life in general or whatever, you can get quite down about it. And you can start thinking negative thoughts. Like when I was stuck in the doldrums for 2 weeks, I was thinking to myself, this could take 3 months to get out of here. And I'm going to run out of water and food and this and that. And there's no way I can win anymore. So it was just negative thinking and it wasn't getting me anywhere. So I could actively say to myself, stop it. Stop this negative thinking right away. Just like break it immediately before you making a pathway for that kind of thought. Because it's something that's not going to get you anywhere. So that was kind of a nice skill because I think one can use it probably in most situations in life.
I bet you've done a TED Talk, haven't you?
No, not really.
This is great TED Talk stuff here.
Okay.
I bet you end up doing that. So you know how Montessori, is that how you say his name?
Montessori, yeah.
Yeah, how he decided to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think about doing that?
Well, I read his book before the race and during the race, and every time he gets to that point where he makes the decision to keep going, I always thought to myself, what was going through his head? So when I passed Cape Horn, I just hypothetically imagined myself now taking the same decision. And at that point, I wanted to keep going because at that point I knew I was in the lead. So obviously you want to get back because there's a chance of winning.
Right.
But I did when I got stuck in the doldrums and I thought I might not have a chance of winning anymore. I didn't really feel like arriving in Les Sables d'Olonne anymore. Like I thought it would be kind of nice to just sail over the finish line, but then not go into port, swing a left and go to the Azores and get off the boat where no one knows who you are and go and drink a cup of coffee and just be left alone.
Coffee.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah. I've heard that from others that it's just really hard to go back to all those people coming at you.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, it was hard, but on the other hand, it was incredibly encouraging. There were all sorts of people, people I didn't know, people I did know, family, friends. And there was just, it was such a grand moment in my life that I was filled with joy. And
you looked happy.
Yeah, I was. And, after 8 months, if you arrive to such a festive atmosphere, of course, you're happy and you're happy to see people again.
Yeah.
And that kind of stayed. Even that people now, more than a year later are still interested in my story. It's quite encouraging. Like it's I guess it's encouraging in the sense that I can share something because I had this incredible joy and privilege to live something so amazing. And it is nice to be able to share it to some other degree with people who are interested.
Well, you mentioned that you didn't realize how much it impacted everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I had no idea that, there were people all over the
following
world following and I read the comments afterwards in the social media or emails that people had sent me and I couldn't unfortunately answer to them all, but the fact that people were writing to me while I was on the race and they knew I couldn't read the comment, but they just wanted to say, hey, we're behind you and we're cheering you on. It's huge.
Since I said I was going to be interviewing you, a lot of people have said, oh my gosh, I followed her all along. There's like this Jim McCann. He said he was following you, and a lot of other people. They were following the whole thing. You didn't even know who these people were.
Exactly.
You're out there talking to yourself and you didn't.
and yet vicariously they were to some other degree living the adventure with me. So it's pretty cool.
Right. Well, all these people I'm talking about are sailors. They haven't done what you've done, but some of them have circumnavigated. But it is pretty incredible. And you had done some. Tell about the bike trip from Europe to South Africa. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was also a very life enriching experience. Basically, I was pretty young. I was 22. I wanted to cycle from north to south through Africa because it's kind of like felt like it's my continent and I don't know it well and I want to explore it. And of course, people said you're going to get yourself killed trying to do that. That's a dangerous thing to undertake. And I set off anyway. And it was a very different experience. I was cycling on my own, but of course I was meeting people. So it was a very interesting cultural experience. And, some places you were meeting the poorest of the poor people, but they were happy that you were there. They were treating you like a guest of honor. They were willing to share whatever they had to eat or, whatever roof they could offer or protection they could offer you. So on a human level, it was a very, very deep experience that.
Now, didn't you start in Europe?
I did, yeah. I started in Europe and I ended back home in South Africa.
All the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
With a few detours, trying to find safe ways around potentially politically unstable countries or whatever. So, yeah.
How long did it take?
It took me a year. And it wasn't to break a record or to race or anything. It was just to go out there and do my little pilgrimage back home.
Did you set a record?
I don't think so. I assume maybe no one had cycled the exact route that I'd cycled before, but I'm not aware of having set any records. I might have been the first woman to cycle through Africa. Don't know.
Wow.
Because I did it really on my own steam back then. I had no sponsorship. I had no support. I didn't even have a phone with me. So no one knew I was doing it. And I guess some eyebrows were raised when I was arriving back in, Southern Africa, like Namibia and South Africa. But up until that point, It was really just my family and my friends who knew that I was underway.
And your parents, so they just scared to death?
My mother was scared to death. My mother was convinced she'd never see me again. So I
On
think for
both
her,
trips? On the
actually, no, for the race, she was really cool. I told her that I, wanted to sign up for the golden race. She's like, yeah, sure, do. It sounds like just your kind of thing. I think the Africa trip had primed her for anything else that was going to come after that.
Oh my gosh. I bet she's very proud.
Yeah, she was
Look,
she was a really good support. She helped me in any way she could.
so you were out there, and I remember you said at first you were kind of checking your location with the VHF with some
Mhm,
ships and everything. And
mhm.
then it's after that you felt like, I got this. Did you ever
Yeah,
wonder, like, do I really know where I am? Did you ever wonder?
initially initially it was exactly like that for me. Although I'd had the opportunity to practice sailing from Canada down to South Africa and South Africa back up to
Yeah.
France, but I'd had the GPS on there parallel. So every time I did my celestial navigation, I could check how far was I off the GPS position. But then for the race, it was the first time that I was really switching it off altogether. So the first ships that I saw, I was asking them for their position. And of course, if they're visible, they're probably a couple of miles away. So that was good enough. And then I did come to a point where it's like, nah, I know where I am. It's okay. It would have been different if there'd been fog or poor visibility or any other reason why I might not have been able to get a good sight. But I got so into the routine of it that I remember like having a random conversation with some cargo ship in the Southern Atlantic. And the ship called me saying, are you okay? Because I haven't seen a sailboat this far south in a long time. And then we got talking and I told the person about the race and about the retro aspect of it. And he said to me, oh, really? He said, would you like my position? Because then you can verify yours. And I'm like, no, I'm all right, thanks. I think I know where I am.
I'm good. Oh, I bet he remembers that conversation. Let's see. What else was I going to ask? Oh, let's talk about the rescue. Now, when you were describing that 24 hours you were behind the wheel, I was like, I felt stressed for you. So just go
Yeah.
ahead, tell
I
just a
mean,
little bit about.
it was stressful because I did want to get to him, but it was also some really good sailing. Like I was almost feeling guilty sailing towards him because intermittently I didn't have wind, but then when the wind came through, it was good wind and it was on a good angle for Minnehaha to sail really fast.
Ah,
I was actually really enjoying that night of just helming, and then there was this beautiful sunrise in the morning, and I was thinking, this is not good because I'm actually enjoying myself, the sailing aspect of it.
how many knots were you going?
I, I think she was doing probably on 7.5 to 8.5 knots, if not touching
Sweet.
on the nines at time. So
Wow.
I got to her much quicker than my ETA initially, said I was going to. They said to me, do you think your ETA is going to be? And I got there quite a number of hours quicker. So she was sailing well. Of course, she was sailing better because I was helming her. And if it hadn't been for the fact that it was a rescue, if I was just sailing in the race, I would have let the wind vane do its thing.
And were you running the engine? At that point, you were allowed to, right?
Yeah, exactly. So initially, when I got the call, I fired up the engine because at that point in time, I had no wind. But then, of course, the moment the wind came through, I switched the engine off. And then it was a low pressure system that had moved over. So there was a brief lull where there wasn't any wind between the northwesterly and the southwesterly. And in that lull, I switched the engine on again. So
Okay, so you still had to conserve your number of liters, right?
no,
Because there was no way for you to get some more.
Yeah, so I mean they were checking what I was doing and they were also checking the weather. So I couldn't have said to them, well, I had to motor for 24 hours because there was no wind. They would have known that that's nonsense. But they asked me at the end of the rescue, they said, how many liters of fuel do you think you've used? Because I don't have fuel gauges, so I couldn't give an exact answer on that. But they said, just guess. And I knew my engine pretty well, so I knew how much I was consuming on those amount of revs that I was using. So I gave them my guesstimate of consumption, and they said that sounds about right. So they gave me an extra fuel allowance for that.
Okay. Yeah. So you weren't any risk of running out, like where you would need it later on, or
No,
okay.
because how they had done it is when you left Les Sables d'Olonne, all the competitors had to leave with full fuel tanks, filled to
Okay.
capacity for emergencies. And then what they did is when you arrived at the end, they made you fill it up to capacity again. And then that's how they saw how many
Okay.
liters to use. Yeah. So I had plenty.
I gotcha. Okay. So tell the name of the fella whose boat sank. What was his name?
Tapio.
Tapir.
Yeah.
And he's sitting in the Southern Ocean in his, I do have a picture of that. Poor guy.
Yeah.
But he was in a good mood about it.
He was.
There
He
is.
was. Life lesson and positivity, that's for sure.
Yeah, he had big smiles on his face.
Yeah.
So I guess this was taken by the tanker.
Yeah, that would have been one of the crew taking photos of us before he'd disembarked Minnehaha to transfer over.
So you guys were just kind of towing the life raft, and you guys
Exactly.
were toasting his survival. You toasted him.
Yep, exactly. We were toasting that he was good and well. I think he might have come down below and had a brief tour of Minnehaha, and then we were just sitting there chatting. So.
And have you talked to him since then?
I have. I've been in contact with him a few times. He actually invited me to Finland after the race, which I took him up on that offer. So I saw him in Finland, and then I saw him again in Cape Town because he was in the Ocean Globe race and they had a stop in Cape Town. So
okay, and that was pretty sad that he lost he lost everything.
Exactly. That is really sad, and that's why I say it was a life lesson in positivity, because he was incredibly positive. He was just happy, rather than moping about the fact that he lost his whole boat and everything on board it.
Yeah, it could have been over for him. So
yeah.
Did he ever find out what it was?
No, I mean, there's speculation on what it might have been. It could have been a leaking through hull that eventually, caused a bulkhead to break, and then the flood wave hit him. Or the thing is, he said the water was coming in from the stern, so it seems unlikely that he hit something, because he'd hit something on the bow or on the side rather than on the stern. Or his boat was pretty light and pretty heavily loaded, and he was sailing hard because he was doing well at that time. So maybe the rig was handling it, but maybe it sprang a crack in the hull. But it'll always ever only be speculation.
Well, came in through the engine, through the
stern gland or something. Yeah, who really knows?
Yeah. Whew, that's rough.
Yeah, it is.
So okay. Was there a particular moment of unexpected beauty or inspiration that stood out to you during your solo journey? I know you probably didn't ask that before, but
there were many. This is the thing. There were many moments when I was really in my element, when I was really, really happy, when it felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. But a few of them, Wales off Cape Town, because it was the season when the humpbacks passed that coastline, and they were just I arrived on the still moonlit night with humpbacks all around me. So that was pretty spectacular. And they were, surfacing right next to the boat. Another really cool moment was waking up at 2 a.m, going outside to check that everything was okay, and then seeing light on the southern horizon, a sort of white light, and staring at it, thinking, what is that? And realizing the light's moving, and what it was the aurora. So that was pretty special. It was just south of Tasmania, where I'm like, wow, I've never seen the aurora out at sea and in the southern hemisphere. And then I had some moments.
But the stars were.
Some starry nights were just, wow, amazing, shooting stars or whatever the case may be. And then there were some really good moments of sailing in the Southern Ocean where, Minnehaha was getting the speed records, and she was surfing so fast down waves that she was shooting a rooster tail off her stern. And that was just like, I can't believe this 36-foot, 13-ton boat is doing these kind of speeds, where that was just exhilarating.
Sounds like a fabulous trip.
It was.
And I want to see you come through the Gulf and everything. I don't know if you know where I am. I'm on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. Do you know where the Gulf of Mexico is?
I've got a sort of an idea of it. I've never been there, so it sounds like a place I should check out someday.
It's wonderful. I'm really sad that the west coast of Florida is getting hit right now by a hurricane, a category 4, and that's where I like to go. The west coast of Florida, the Keys. I hope you're over this way. I mean, this is definitely worth seeing.
Oh, yeah.
You got to see the Caribbean, right?
Sounds very cool.
Yeah. And I do have some good interviews of people talking about, good routes from Florida to the Caribbean, into the Bahamas and everything. Okay. Can you describe a particular challenging or pivotal moment during the race where you had to adapt quickly without modern tools or assistance?
I guess one really pivotal moment was when I got hit by that big wave that damaged the hydrovane because it had turned the rudder out of alignment. It was forcing the boat to windward. So the boat was taking the waves broadside on. And of course, these things always happen at night. So you're hanging over the stern at night with huge waves crashing broadside over the boat, thinking to yourself, what is going on? With maybe just a little headlamp, and then realizing what it is and realizing that you're going to have to grab a couple of wrenches and realign the rudder. That was a moment where I had to react really quickly. So first hand steer, get the boat back downwind so that we weren't taking the waves at such a dangerous angle, and then intermittently hand steer while you're trying to work on the problem.
Right. And I noticed that you didn't really strap yourself in.
Yeah, like in a moment like that, I did, strap myself in because it's just
people are always on me for that. I don't always want to sit there all strapped in and everything, or even have a life jacket, a life vest on. But I never saw one on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad thing to say, and I know a lot of people criticize me about it, but I mean, I can count on one hand how often I put my harness on and tether.
I get it.
And those were stormy moments.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure your mom would have liked to see that on you, though, huh? Hope she's not watching. Piece of advice you wish you could have given yourself before starting the race.
On a very technical sort of note, I would have had my main sail cut in such a way that when I reef it, it forces the boom up. Because when you reef down to third, or if you even got a fourth reef, you don't want your boom anywhere near the water anymore because you don't want it touching. So that was a thing that kind of irritated me because I was always worried that the boom was going to touch. So that's like a really, really technical thing. Then the less technical thing is I'd advise anyone, if you like coffee, make sure that you've taken enough.
That's more important than the sail.
Yeah.
You can put up with anything with that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I guess on a more sort of a philosophical level, I would have advised myself right from the start is just to race my own race.
Well, you did.
Focus. I did, yeah. I did. I realized it early enough into the race, I guess. And then I guess I did tell myself this quite often, enjoy it, because before you know it, it's going to be over. Even though it seems like such a long trip, it passes in the blink of an eye. And you can never go back to your time. So you've just got to embrace every moment of it.
Yeah, and so you couldn't even watch a YouTube video to distract yourself, could you?
Yeah, which I kind of miss, not having that distraction. On the other hand, I could read books, which I don't do that much when I'm on land because I'm always in a rush. And then when I do have a spare moment, then I'm answering emails or something like that. So,
right. So you did read some books. What did you read?
The type of book I really enjoyed on that race was historical novels, or novels based in an historical setting, because you're learning something about an historical era, but without it being written history book style. So it's still a novel with characters, and you can still escape into the mind of the person.
Historical fiction.
Yeah,
Like based on reality, based on
exactly.
some sort of. I like to read those kind of things too, especially if I'm visiting somewhere. I like to be at about that place wherever I am.
Exactly.
So, yeah, what did you read? What did you read about, like Robinson Crusoe or something?
I did read a few books like that, but I guess I'd taken some of
Or
the books I
pirates?
knew I'd enjoy. So there's a South African author who writes historical fiction or actual novels sometimes with people that probably did exist, and she writes about the bush, the deep South African Afro-Montane bush. And it was quite nice because you're stuck on the middle of the ocean. There are no plants around you. There are no trees or anything like that. And suddenly she's describing this bush in all its detail down to what it smells like. So I quite enjoyed that because I know the area. It's just something you can escape away to when you have to.
Well, it's so cool. I don't know if I'd be brave enough to go out on. I mean, I am out of the box. I'm out of the box girl too, just like you. But the Southern Ocean, that just sounds a little scary.
You just get closer to it and closer to it, and eventually you'd be in it, and then you'd probably realize, oh, it's okay, I'll just keep going.
All right, let's see. What else have we not covered? Have you met Robert Knox Johnston? He's still alive, right?
He is, yeah. I met him before the race because he was there at Unassisted Delon, and we had supper with him and all the other skippers and the mayor of Les Sables d'Olonne and all the VIPs. And I got to sit across from him, and we was eating outside, and there was a bit of wind, and he spoke very softly, so I couldn't hear everything he was saying, which I was really quite disappointed about. But then I met him again after the race. Pretty cool that such an iconic person was there.
Oh, absolutely. And just so I mentioned I was going to bring these up here. So here are, let me take this one off. So if you want to watch 3 good documentaries about the 1960s, and they called it the Sunday Times race or something, because the Sunday Times in London, I guess. 1968, the Deepwater, that's 2006, about Donald Crowhurst, that whole story. That was the first one I ever watched years ago. And then the shocking true story of Bernard, say the name?
Moitessier. I haven't seen that one. I'm curious now as well.
Yeah, you haven't seen that one?
I haven't, no.
That's a good one. And then Sir Robin Knox Johnston, sailing legend. And that's a good that covers, a good amount of information there. And then if you want to watch the one about Kirsten, I meant to run this the whole time. Kirsten Neuschafer, the Golden Globe story, and that is on YouTube at Sailing Magic Carpet. How did you hook up with her? That was really well done.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She and her partner are actually rebuilding a Cape George 36. So somehow she heard about me, or I heard about her. I can't remember which way it went, but it was quite funny because I was in Prince Edward Island refitting the boat, and they were in Port Townsend, I think. So we were on opposite sides of the continent, and we got talking, and and that was pretty cool. There was Cape George was the connection.
She had she was able to take the footage from your footage and then put it together like that. Is that how that worked? Is that or did somebody else put it all together?
She did everything.
That was pretty impressive.
She did a really good job. So that footage was footage that the race had already put out on the internet for every photo gate, for every competitor. They put out a certain amount of footage. So she took all the footage that was already out there and she turned it into that story. So she did a fantastic job.
It was a great kind of overall story of how it all of your whole experience. So again, if anybody wants to get caught up on that, it's Kirsten Neuschafer, the Golden Globe story, YouTube at Sailing Magic Carpet. It's definitely worth a watch, and these other ones too. So is this the only one that you haven't seen? Is Shocking True Story? Is that the only
I'm really curious now, so I've got to Look
Yeah,
at
it's a little bit like he had a wife and I think a family that he just said, "See you later."
yeah, and I knew that he had a wife and a family because he wrote, I think he wrote 4 books. I haven't read his last book, but I read the first 3, the third one being about the race, and then the first and the second one. But the second one describes how he sails with his wife all over to Polynesia, and then they sail around Cape Horn because she's eager to get back to her kids in France. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I think
And
they broke up over that. I don't think he ever went back. Like he stopped in Tahiti. Was it Tahiti?
exactly, and he
And
didn't go back.
he met somebody else and had a kid.
Yeah. Because the kids, her kids, he had actually adopted. They weren't his biological kids.
Okay.
So, but
I
he
guess
seemed to.
it could really mess with your mind when you're out there at
Well,
sea like that.
that's what some people say is that he lost it.
Yeah. And look at you, you're so well adjusted. All right, let's see. Let me see if I have anything else in here in this disorganized list here. Minimal technology, we did that. I think we did everything. I think we hit the highlights. So your next adventure, is it going to be around the world with technology? Are you there? Uh-oh. I think I lost her. Oh. Okay, well, I guess that we will end it there. That's a shame. Kirsten, if you're watching this later, it was such a pleasure. This was fabulous. Maybe you can hear me and I just can't. Maybe you just don't have the camera there. But anyway, I just want to say thank you. This was an honor, and I hope we can talk again. And I hope that yep, she's off there now. I hope that we can talk again, and I would love to talk to you about your next adventure. And I hope it's going to be over here and going through the Panama Canal. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed that. I sure did. And how do I usually go out? Let me get my, okay, here we go. Salty Abandon out.